Kicking off our list is Hilary Duff. She became a teen icon when she took on the role of Lizzie McGuire, but sadly all good things cannot last forever. Preteens were devastated all over the world when the series came to an end, but were thrilled when they announced the Lizzie McGuire movie. Everyone was hoping there'd be a sequel, but apparently the reason it didn't happen was because of a money dispute. According to Entertainment Weekly, the sequel was cancelled when Hilary's mom, Suzanne Duff, wouldn't accept Disney's deal for it. It was reported that she was offered a $500,000 bonus for the sequel if the first one reached $50 million. But the momager wanted to receive the bonus immediately rather than waiting. She spoke on it and said, "Disney thought they'd be able to bully us into accepting whatever offer they wanted to make, and they couldn't. We walked away from a sequel, they walked away from the franchise." Boom. Next up in spot number 9 is Steve Whitmire, also known as Kermit the Frog. The voice actor and puppeteer was fired from Disney for a few different reasons, but it's been reported that money was part of it. One of the reasons was because he refused to work on a particular project because of a contract dispute involving him wanting more money. According to THR, Disney and the Muppet Studio said his way of negotiation delayed productions and said that they had issues with him for many years. Turns out issues with him demanding more money goes back to the early days when he was actually on Sesame Street, where he voiced Ernie and Kermit for years. Side note, I had no idea that it was one actor playing both parts. Just saying, you learned something new today. A source spoke on it and said, "People think he left Sesame Street to focus on the Muppets. He was actually fired for demanding too much money." Well, you know what they say, it's not easy being green. Get it? Stealing the number 8 spot is J-Lo. We've seen her star in a variety of movies, but people loved seeing her as a judge on American Idol in season 10. But in July 2012, she announced to Ryan Seacrest that she decided not to return for the next season so that she could focus on her music career and 2 children. But then articles started surfacing revealing that she was actually let go by Fox because she was asking for a $2 million raise in her salary. That would have brought her up to $17 million. But regardless of the reason, her story did have a happy ending because a year later, the producers decided to give her the raise and more and welcomed her back on for $17.5 million per season until she left in 2016. Talk about the deal. Yes, they said no, and then they brought you back with more than you asked for. Moving on to number 7, we have Chad Michael Murray. He broke out into the spotlight after booking a lead role on the hit TV series One Tree Hill. The show lasted 9 seasons, but Chad's time ended after the 6th. News broke that he would not be returning for the 7th season, and fans had no idea why, nor were we happy about it. Turns out that money was the driving factor, and since everyone's salary was going up the following season, he kind of expected the same. But instead, the network didn't want to give him a raise or any pay at all. He told some of his fans that they fired him to save their studio some money. Video footage leaked of him taking pictures with some fans in North Carolina back in 2009, and a fan asked why he isn't going to be on the show. In the video, he says, "They don't want me. I'm not joking, they're not bringing me back because they want to save money." At number 6 is Lauren Cohan, also known as Maggie from the TV series The Walking Dead. She was a staple character on the show, which is why it shocked fans back in 2018 when they learned that she was in a salary standoff against the network. AMC had to decide if they were going to axe her character or accept her salary negotiations. But her co-star, Kahari Payton, came to her defense and posted a picture of her to his Twitter with the caption that said, "Pay the woman." Maggie said that maybe it was a sign for her to leave since things just weren't lining up in many ways, even outside of the salary raise. Ultimately, they actually let her go, but she was getting offers elsewhere for new roles, so it all worked out in the end. Halfway through at number 5 is Crispin Glover. He's famously known for his role as George McFly in the iconic movie Back to the Future. And if you're a fan, then you've probably wondered why he never returned for the sequels. There's been a few different speculations as to why, and one of them is money. Turns out he had asked for more money. He spoke on it and said, "People say I asked for the same amount of money as Michael J. Fox, which is a total fabrication. I wanted to be in the movie, but the offer was less than half of what Leah Thompson and Tom Wilson, who had similar sized roles. It just wasn't fair." He only got really mad with the studio because they used him in the sequel without his consent. They actually took old prosthetic molds that they had on his face in the first movie and put a new actor into them and then intersected old footage somehow. Good news is he won the lawsuit for for it. So we did get some money from them. Here now at number 4 we have Suzanne Somers. This one goes further back to the 5th season of Three's Company in 1980. It was one of the most popular shows on television at the time, and the actress and her co-star, John Ritter, earned Golden Globe nominations for it. But Suzanne was not happy and asked the ABC executives for a raise. She was making $30,000 an episode at the time, and they offered her an extra $5,000 per episode. But she wanted much more than that. She had a different number in mind. She actually demanded $150,000 an episode. The studio denied her request and basically laughed in her face. And then she refused to film. Like purposely, she would not show up to set on her scheduled days, so she was fired from the show. Which makes sense. Taking the number 3 spot is Terrence Howard. The actor earned the highest paycheck on the set of Iron Man. He was said to have earned $4.5 million, which was actually more than Robert Downey Jr., who played the actual hero. But when the sequel came, he was told he was going to get a pay cut because after the success of the first one, they were going to pay Robert more. Rightfully so. Karen says he was set to make $8 million for the second film, but they only offered him $1 million. He was not okay with this and even started to bash Robert and the studio publicly. And that is when he got fired and they hired Don Cheadle instead. Rolling into number 2 is Sean Connery, but many people will still refer to him as James Bond. He's been very open about his feelings about the franchise, saying that he has grown bored with it, but also exposed the financial issues that he had with it. According to Express, he signed on to You Only Live Once for $750,000 plus a 25% share of merchandising, which he was cool with. But when it came to the next Bond film, he declared that he would only return to the franchise if they paid him $1 million plus a percentage of the film's gross. They were not okay with this deal, and instead they hired George Lazenby for $50,000. So they actually saved money this way. That's how you do it, my friends. Showing everyone up at number 1 is Charlie Sheen, which is not shocking. This one is so crazy because he was actually making the most ridiculous amount of money compared to anyone on our list today, yet he still had the audacity to ask for more. He was the highest paid actor on television for his role on 2.5 Men, making approximately $2 million per episode. God forbid that was not enough money. He demanded a pay raise to $3 million an episode in order to continue the series. CBS executives thought that it was ridiculous, and declined his demands. That is when he started to spiral completely out of control and started bashing Chuck Lorre, the producer. So they just fired him instead. In at number 10, Hilary Duff. Hilary Duff was on top of the Disney World for years, starring in the hit show Lizzie McGuire. But after the massive success of the 2003 Lizzie McGuire movie, she demanded more. Since the movie was such a hit, Disney asked for a second Lizzie McGuire movie to be made, but the movie stalled because of negotiations. Susan Duff, Hilary Duff's mother and manager, says she asked the promised bonus to be paid immediately, but Disney did not want to oblige. Duff also said that Hilary was getting lowballed for the Lizzie McGuire series, and they were paying Hilary $35,000 per episode, even though other networks were offering 6 figures. Because of these contract negotiations, both the TV series and plans for the movie sequel ended. And I am so disappointed because Lizzie McGuire movie is literally one of the best movies of all time, and I would die to see a second. It is so great. In at number 9, Kirstie Alley. 1982 Star Trek II The Wrath of Khan opened with a young Kirstie Alley playing the character Saavik. We eventually learned that Alley is a trainee and it was all a simulation, but those moments with Alley on screen made a deep impact on the whole movie. The character of Saavik appears twice more in the franchise, but not played by Alley. When asked why she was booted from the sequels, Alley told StarTrek.com in 2016 that it was because of money. Apparently she didn't ask for more money, instead the franchise offered her less money for a sequel, which is basically unheard of. She said, quote, "That never made sense to me, you're not paying me as much for the first one and it's a bigger role." She claimed she tried to inquire about the lowball, but instead of answers, she was just cut. In at number 8, Crispin Glover. In 1985's Back to the Future, Crispin Glover played Marty McFly's dad, George McFly, and even though the movie was uber successful, Glover did not appear in the sequel. His absence in the second film even led to a lawsuit. The story is that Glover was unhappy with the script for the second movie and demanded the same salary as the film's lead, Michael J. Fox, who made $1 million. But in 2012, Glover says that was a lie, and he was only offered $150,000 for the sequel, which was half the amount offered to stars who had similar sized roles in the film. He also said when he tried to negotiate, the offer was actually decreased by $25,000. The film ended up casting someone else in Glover's Glover's role, but put a mold of Glover's face on this actor's face. Then Glover sued the film for using his likeness and got $760,000. And at number 7, Bruce Willis. The Expendables franchise is full of huge stars like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Jason Statham, to name a few. Bruce Willis joined the cast in the 2010 movie, along with a 2012 sequel where he picked up a larger role. And even though he was set to star in the third film, it didn't happen, and Harrison Ford took the role instead. Later it was reported that monetary disputes were the reason for the change. The Hollywood Reporter exposed, quote, Willis was offered $3 million for 4 days of consecutive work, and he allegedly demanded a pay bump to $4 million, $1 million per day, but the studio did not oblige and Ford was cast within days. And at number 6, Marcus Chong. Marcus Chong, who played Tank in The Matrix, was one of the only members of the cast to survive. However, he didn't show up in the sequels, causing suspicion. The franchise wanted Chong to be a part, however he claims he was offered too little. In Chong's own 45-minute YouTube documentary called The Marcus Chong Story, he says he was offered $250,000 to appear in 2003's The Matrix Reloaded and The Matrix Revolutions, but he wanted $1 million. The film said no, so strangely enough Chong came back asking for $500,000 or to work for free. Didn't really understand that part, but apparently the franchise was done with the games and decided to just cut him instead. Halfway at number 5, Sean Connery. Sean Connery is known by many as the best James Bond, and fans were devastated when he was quickly replaced. He first played the role of 007 in 1962, then he played in 4 more movies before he decided to ask for more money from the franchise. By the time Connery starred in 1967's You Only Live Twice, for which he was paid $750,000 plus a 25% share of merchandising, he was apparently just kinda bored with the role and took a risky move by asking for more money. He demanded $1 million, but the franchise declined. As a result, George Lazenby was given the role, to the dismay of fans. After that film was hit with terrible reviews, Connery was asked back and he made $1.25 million for 1971's Diamonds Are Forever. And at number 4, Maggie Rhee. Maggie starred on The Walking Dead right from the first season and was a staple in the show, but in season 9, she disappeared from the show, leaving many to wonder why. It was later reported that money was the reason. The show did not meet her monetary demands, so she was cut from season 9 and went on to play in ABC's action dramedy Whiskey Cavalier. But apparently her time with the show was already on the rocks, and she was bored of playing the same character for 8 years. Apparently she also wanted to explore comedy and more happy projects. In the end, since she had not been killed off the show, just written off, she did come back for the 11th and final season. And at number 3, Suzanne Somers. Suzanne Somers starred in ABC's Three's Company, which was one of the most successful sitcoms ever. The show chronicled 2 women living with a man in a house in Santa Monica and followed their antics. After a few years, Somers decided to request a raise for this successful show, especially since learning her male counterpart on the show, John Ritter, was paid $150,000 per episode, while she was only making $30,000 per episode. Apparently, when she confronted the network about this, they offered her a $5,000 per episode raise, but that wasn't enough. So she didn't show up for the filming and was fired. She was then replaced on the show with a look-alike character. Apparently her firing was a part of a bigger picture, and there were other women who wanted more money from the network, so they decided to make an example out of Somers by cutting her. And at number 2, Terrence Howard. Marvel fans first saw Terrence Howard playing the role of James Rhodey Rhodes, who later became War Machine. But then in Iron Man 2, Howard was not in the film, rather Don Cheadle played Rhodey in the MCU after that. Howard did not keep his anger to himself and openly discussed why he was axed. In 2013 on Watch What Happens Live, Howard told Andy Cohen that when it was time to make Iron Man 2, Marvel only wanted to pay him 1/8 of what they owed him. Howard even reached out to Robert Downey Jr., who did not offer any support. Howard even claimed he took a $1 million pay cut to get Downey Jr. cast in his role, to which Marvel denied. In the end, Howard retracted many of his callouts and claimed him and Downey Jr. were on good terms again. And finally, at number 1, Robert Duvall. Duvall first became critically acclaimed through his role as Tom Hagen in The Godfather. He even earned an Academy Award nomination for his work in the film and starred in the second movie as well. But he did not make it into part 3 of the film, apparently due to money. Speaking in 2004, Duvall explained that he not only left because he wanted more money than he was making, he was more so just disgusted at how much more some other actors were making. Saying, quote, "I said I would work easily if they paid Al Pacino twice what they paid me, that's fine. But not 3 or 4 times, which is what they did." In 2010, he explained he had no regrets about not appearing in the film because of the poor reviews that it got.